The Russian armed forces gain additional ground at various parts along the front line while they try to push through to gain a breakthrough before the Western aid arrives in mass and can probably stop them. We'll talk about this and what else happened along the front line and behind the front lines of both sides. Situation report about the war in Ukraine. In the last days, the Russians struck railway stations, railway transports, likely in an attempt to slow down the delivery of weaponry that is now coming from Poland or through Poland from the US to the front lines. Several railroad yards closer to the front lines have been struck as well. The Russians claim that they managed to destroy delivered weaponry. Whether that is true or not, as of now, I cannot say. The Ukrainian president said that already this year the Russians used more than 9,000 gliding bombs along the front lines, showing the massive effort the Russians put up and showing the effectiveness, how it helps the Russians advancing. At the same time, Ukraine tries its best to do whatever they can. Here we have a Yakovlev, I think, 52. It's a training plane from the Soviet Union flying, and this was supposedly at Odessa, where it shot down a reconnaissance drone. So apparently, Ukraine is using training planes with a top speed of 350 kilometers an hour to shoot down drones now to ease their air defense usage of resources. Let's switch to the developments along the front line. From Sumy, the Ukrainian border forces say that there's a heavier activity lately. Almost daily, there are attempts by Russian sabotage or reconnaissance group to cross the front line, to cross the international border into Sumy. The Ukrainians apparently managed to stop them and repulse them every time, but the Russians keep a high intensity there as well. North of the Seversky Donetsk Eastern Front, we have a Russian success for quite a while. Here, northwest of Svatove, at this area here, the Russians managed to advance over the railroad line and mostly conquer Kislivka. This part here, the 2 lanes of houses here are contested, but the Russians over the last few days basically gained all of this area, a breakthrough of at least, or success, a conquest of 600 meters in depth and 1.85 kilometers in width was achieved by the Russians. South of the Seversky Donetsk, we have additional attacks going from the Russians in the area, in the direction of Siversk, basically Bilohorivka, this area, Spirne Vesele. The Russians try to attack in this area, but we have an interesting and surprising result as we have a geolocalization of Ukrainian troops in this position, actually even visible from Google Maps already, in the trench line here, east of Verkhnoukamyanske. This is here. So the Ukrainians managed to advance somewhat in the area here directly east of Verkhnoukamyanske, where the road here should be area here. Roughly here, they managed to push forward. So apparently they managed a smaller counterattack, had somewhat successful. Further south, the Russians keep pushing towards Kasiv Yar. I cannot confirm fresh successes, but the Russians use massive air power, especially gliding bombs. The expectation is that they flatten multi-story buildings that are used for Ukrainian defense to deprive them of the usage, and a bigger attack will come fairly soon. In Ivanivska, the Russians were somewhat successful in south. Here in the area, they have achieved fresh positions. It's unclear how many Ukrainians are still in this area or if there are still any, but it seems that the Russians now have confirmed their hold over Ivanivska, over bigger parts of Ivanivska. Further south at Avdiivka, the situation is developing really badly. The Russians have advanced in the area of Novokalinove further and have reached the outskirts of Keramik by now. Now, just a few days ago, they were still down here, and now they basically took Novokalinove. It's not fully confirmed if it's fully lost yet, but a look on the map shows that if Ukrainians stay here, they are increasingly threatened of being cut off. So it seems likely that this will fall over the next few days here. In Ocheretine, they seem to have had full success by now. Have a picture from a Ukrainian mill blogger who shows that basically not just the south and the center is now under Russian control, but also the full west and most of the north. According to him, basically just some fragments in the north that are not fully occupied by the Russians yet, that are still in a contested area. So basically, the Ukrainian presence in Ocheretine has ended as of now. This was, as said, is a big setback, as this was one of the anchors of the Ukrainian defensive line in this area. Further south, the Russians achieve additional successes. Just in the latest situation report, I showed you that they managed to mostly take Novobakhmutivka. Now they have extended their holds to the tree line south of it, and they seem to be in control of Soloviev by now. Have a geolocalization here, and this shows Russian soldiers at the westernmost part of the town, which is roughly here. Completely sure, but it seems like even the Ukrainians confirm that Soloviev is lost to them by now. Further south, the same news. Berdichi is lost. We have a geolocalization here of Russian west of it in westernmost part now. This is confirming that this whole area has now fallen to the Russians after Semenivka had fallen over the last few days already. So this part of their defensive line is now lost as well. The Ukrainians will likely have to withdraw significantly further west, as the pressure in the north is threatening them to roll up their front line at this part of their defenses. So overall, in the Avdiivka area, the situation is very bad. The Russians keep advancing while they haven't achieved a big breakthrough yet that allows them a war of maneuver. At the same time, wherever you hear that a town is being fought over, it seems a matter of days until it's taken. There are even claims that the Russians are already at the outskirts of Arkhangelsk. This I cannot confirm yet, but the situation is really developing badly in this area. The Russians put up a big effort to change the overall dynamics at the front line here. Further south at Krasnohorivka, the Russians are advancing further. They have now been spotted at the top of this area here. We have a localization of this as well, of Russian soldiers being right here. Now they control, as you can see at this map, which is probably still conservative, that they control all of this area. We've seen a Russian tank up here already. This should be under Russian control more or less by now as well. So Krasnohorivka, the front line is also under massive pressure. Further south, actually no massive change here. From Novomikhailivka, it seems that the Ukrainians might still have some presence here. The Duchess there, I cannot confirm that fully, but Novomikhailivka itself has basically fallen even if the Ukrainians still hold a house or two in this area. Further west, there are signs of Russian preparation for coming attacks close to Vuhledar, but as of now, nothing has changed. But here at the oblast border, south of Velika Novosilka, the Russians have managed to push further north. Have visual evidence now of them having reached these houses here. Last it had been these houses here at this tree line, and we see them slowly creeping forward inside of Urushaine. So they seem to have now entered Urushaine proper, increasing the pressure on the Ukrainians in this area. From Orikhiv or Robotine, I have no confirmed changes as of now. The map is still wrong, in my opinion. Robotine, at the very least, up to this point, is with Russian presence. So the front line is probably at the very least like this. But apart from that, I do not see any significant change. At Krinky, I cannot see anything either, but we have some news from the Crimean. Here we have this here. This is Riba showing, claiming that the Ukrainians, in coordination with NATO, are preparing an air attack or an attack series on the Crimean Peninsula. According to Riba, which is one of the big Russian mail bloggers, government affiliated, there's a lot of NATO reconnaissance platforms around the Crimean Peninsula, and the Ukrainians have shot MALT, so decoys that can simulate other flying objects on the Crimean Peninsula. This would actually make sense because those devices can simulate being a plane, thus the Russian air defense would activate, and then the reconnaissance platforms here could identify where Russian air defense units are to then be struck by the Ukrainians. As we now have more or less the confirmation that Ukraine should have received 100 long-range ATACMS, so with a range of 300 kilometers by now, putting all of this in their range, and thus obviously they need to identify air defense systems either to strike them or to help avoid them at the same time. So while the delivery of aid is starting and will soon probably show some effect, the situation is far worse than it would imply. This is a Ukrainian website that usually publishes or often publishes interviews with Ukrainian soldiers. And here we have another interview with a colonel of a Ukrainian brigade. And he says from the 3rd Brigade, I think he's, yeah, from the 93rd Brigade. And he's saying that the lack of manpower is worse than the lack of ammunition. So while we heard the whole time that the Ukrainians can't shoot anymore, he says the lack of manpower is far, far worse. This is obviously a direct result of Zelensky refusing to recruit the 500,000 soldiers when then Commander-in-Chief Zalushny asked for it. The reason for that are various, and I guess talked about it in the past, and it's pointless to reiterate it again, whether Ukraine would have even been able to do this successfully or whether Zelensky could have pushed it through because of political problems there. But the fact remains that it shows now. Zalushny was right asking for a significant increase in manpower, and we have units at 30% strength, which according to NATO standard means that units basically destroyed, but they are still along the front line. Ukraine has massive problems, and there is no rapid change expected, as while the mobilization law has been signed into law now, it'll still take months until those soldiers are well trained, unless Ukraine sends them to the front line with 2 weeks of training, which would almost be worse, as they would suffer tremendously. In troop generation, we have innovative by the Ukrainians again. They use light planes as drones now. Ukraine has a aircraft industry that for sports planes. Here in Russia, they found a small plane 1,000 kilometers from the border, clearly remotely piloted with a 100-kilogram bomb for it. So, and it even had a optical sensor to allow it. I guess it was meant to throw itself into the target, even though the bomb being carried outside would theoretically allow it to drop it and fly back. But whether that is actually planned for is a whole different story. In the political sphere, we have some news from the Russian Foreign Ministry. They say the West wants to stabilize the Caucasus now. They especially mean Armenia, as Armenia is no longer participating in the CSTO meetings, as the CSTO has basically abandoned Armenia when it faced an Azerbaijani invasion in September 20. And now the Russian Foreign Ministry is saying Armenia is going down a dangerous road by moving towards the west, basically threatening Armenia with consequences. And the Russians are preparing a law in the Duma that would ban the deportation of foreigners if they had fought for Russia and they are being threatened with criminal prosecution at home. This is, for instance, in Serbia or in Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan. All of them have already sentenced soldiers or fighters that fought for Russian forces or for the so-called DNR and LNR. In the past, they all sent them into prison, and this is now planning to solve this issue. Now we come to international support, and here we have maybe some good news, but usually, but also at the very least some interesting things. Now we have here the website Army Recognition saying that Ukraine will receive ex-Iraqi self-propelled howitzers, basically, from a British private company. And that obviously sounded good, so I tried to find out how many it would be. And I don't find the numbers, but they reference another webpage that reports it. And the interesting part is they don't give us a source, except that they claim Austrian and Latvian sources have reported it. I Googled it. I didn't find anything. I have no idea if I just didn't find it, or if this is once again just some dramatic good news. I can see it myself on my channel. If I report a Ukrainian success, the channel is performing 10 times as good as usually. I gain 1,000 new subscribers instead of 25 with another video. So giving good news is good for clicks, which increasingly seems that some pages simply seem to invent or exaggerate good news to get better engagement. So here it might be they get self-propelled howitzers, Vodstika and Akatsiya. So 122 and 152 self-propelled ones. That's possible. It could be 2, could be 40. I have no idea. I was not able to find out if that message is even true. And we have something similar here. We have a pro-Ukrainian channel saying that Ukraine will receive 12 T-155 Irtina. Those are, I think, basically K9 Thunder from South Korea, but built by the Turkish Republic, by Turkey. So they will receive 12. They reference a Turkish page. I look at the Turkish page. I translate it, and it says Ukraine plans to supply. That must be a problem in translation. Ukraine plans to supply 12 howitzers. That would mean they plan to buy, I guess. They plan. Out of plan to buy becomes they will receive. They mention, again, Army Recognition. Army Recognition talks about it as well, and they say, as reported by the Middle East Eye, that information was provided in February 2024 by the Middle East Eye, that Erdogan is going to discuss whether the Pentagon will pay for those howitzers. So I checked that link, and that link doesn't mention anything. Again, it just says a Ukrainian general also said in July, that should be to July 2023, that Ukraine was interested in acquiring T-155. So it was interested in acquiring. We have a claim that Erdogan is going to negotiate about the purchase, and the link that is supposed to prove it doesn't say anything. Then we have a Turkish one saying that Ukraine plans to acquire some, and out of that comes Ukraine will receive. This is showing you how difficult it can be to try to have an accurate result in the end of what I'm reporting, and how so often we have great news that then turn out to be bust. Because if I take this by word, if I take it serious and I report they're receiving 12, they might not. I have not found proof. Everyone is referencing the other, and some even forget to link the other side to mention where it's coming from. For instance, this Turkish side was just saying that Army Recognition mentions it without linking to it, so I had to look for it myself. The only possible article it could be. This shows how problematic it can be and how good news can turn out to be complete nonsense. Still, though, we do have good news. The United States make a new package that is being sent to Ukraine in a size of $6 billion US. It's being done over the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative, and it will include Patriot ammunition, NASAMS ammunition, artillery ammunition, HIMARS ammunition, and a lot additional stuff. The problematic thing about this is that it seems like the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative was done before the 61 billion packaging. So I tried to find out, and I find somewhat conflicting. It seems that this could have been done over the last 6 months. It didn't need the Congress. Now, I'm not 100% if this is certain. Politico claims otherwise, but I found several other sources saying, no, this has nothing to do with the 61 billion. Even expressis verbis, even literally saying it has nothing to do with this. But we do know that U.S. Congress signed the Lend-Lease Act, and not a dime of it is used. And it signed it with overwhelming majority. I think only 10 Republicans voted against it. Otherwise, it was full support for this act, and the Biden administration has chosen not to even use this package at all whatsoever. Now it has expired without. So this shows that the problem is systematic. It's not just the Republicans, it's not just Congress, it's going everywhere, and it's going obviously through other countries as well. I will probably end it better here because I repeat it again, again. But we see that the issue is everywhere. It's Western aid that is not being given, even if it could be given. And I don't just want to blame the US. I've talked enough about other countries as well that refuse to give even a mediocre amount, or other nations that give a lot but not what is needed. We've talked about it again and again and again. And at the same time, Ukraine didn't mobilize the personnel they needed. So now they lose every day. They lose veterans that could have trained those fresh recruits that were in dire need of rest, are completely exhausted, thus have a lower combat efficiency, thus have higher losses at the same time. It's Ukraine is in trouble. There's nothing else to say about this. And even we have some more good news. Denmark has signed a new military aid package in size of 600 million US dollars. In total, I read that they are now over 2.3% of their GDP in aid to Ukraine, which is insane compared to other nations. So it's not like this is universal. Just Germany and the US are ignoring the real needs of Ukraine. France, among others, Italy and Spain don't do a lot, but some nations do a lot in comparison. But yeah, Ukraine itself doesn't do what it could either, its full extent, for whatever reasons that I don't need to. And some bad news to finish it off. It seems like the ground-launched small diameter bomb is useless. Ukraine, according to this article and according to the war zone, for instance, Ukraine already gave up using them because it seems to be complicated, and as they have been announced a year in advance, the Russians basically knew how to prepare. Now, the ground-launched small diameter bomb could have been the game changer if it had been in plenty supply. It's a bomb that is being sent out to 160 kilometers, supposedly with high accuracy. Supposedly it can fly, it can pass the target, then turn around and strike it from behind. So this would be the means to destroy every bridge, every rail yard, every command post, every supply depot, everything that could be of use for the Russians, for a fairly low price if the production had been set up. But it was announced publicly. It was known that the navigation seems to be mostly focusing on GPS. So the Russians managed to apparently get enough GPS jammers to turn it to a point where the Ukrainians, when they found out that they don't achieve the success with it, they gave up using it. That's what the media says, that the Ukrainians basically tried it a couple of times, and when they realized it doesn't help us, they stopped even using it, stopped wasting them. Yeah. I don't have better news. Yeah, what am I supposed to say? If you still enjoyed that I kept you updated, I would appreciate a thumbs up, even though the news might not have been to your liking. Leave a comment what you think about the current situation, at least if Google allows you to, because right now they love to, there's a bug that turns off the comment function, at least for a time. And if you're new here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future updates. While I might not have good news right now, at least I try to keep you informed and not just throw propaganda at you, saying to you that Ukraine is winning every day, where you wonder at some point why they haven't been in Moscow yet. But regardless, if you hear a little bit my frustration. I actually had a meeting with a Google representative yesterday where they wanted to talk to me about what to do with my channel, and I said to them, I already know what I should do. I should switch to pure and simple propaganda, either fully pro-Russian or fully pro-Ukraine. Just report success after success after success every day, and the channel would grow massively. Look at the videos I've done in the past. Some of them have, I think, over 200,000 views. I gained, with every big good news video, I gained 1,000 subscribers. Right now I get 15 to 40. and I have 8,000 to 30,000 views, I would have to switch complete to propaganda, and I don't want to. I'm not going to lie to myself about a situation that is in front of my eyes, so I'm not going to lie to my audience either. If you appreciate it, I would love to see it again, but if not, bad luck. I'm not going to sell myself out. So if you want to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description. Thank you very much for watching. And yeah, that was it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.